guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new to the channel, welcome and thank you for finding us. If you like this video, if you like Blu-rays, if you like Hong Kong cinema, if you like crime thrillers, boutique Blu-ray labels, Asian cinema, all that other fun stuff, and you are not subscribed and you would like to subscribe and you enjoy the video and you think that's something that you would enjoy doing, is subscribing and seeing more of these videos, that would be hugely, hugely appreciated. We are so close to 8,000 subs, and that is completely insane for me because our goal for this year was, I think it was like, we had around 3,000 or 4,000 at the start of this year, and I think we were thinking like if we hit 5,000 that would be awesome, and now we're at almost 8,000. It has been an insane year. We're coming to the end of the year, and just thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed, shared our videos, liked our videos, commented on our videos. Please do comment on this video if you want to talk about this film. I love this movie. I will talk about it until the end of time. We were talking about Long Arm of the Law, so this is the set from 88 Films that has both Long Arm of the Law 1 and 2. I'm going to be focusing on the first film in this review. This is truly one of my favorite crime dramas ever. I recently made a list of my 200 favorite movies ever on Letterboxd just for shits and giggles, and because I had done my favorite 100 Hong Kong films, which this was on. This also made it onto the list of my favorite 250 movies ever. And if I made a list of my favorite like 25 probably crime dramas ever, this would absolutely be on there. I didn't put this on my list of my favorite heroic bloodshed films just because it's from 1984. It's like a little bit before we saw the explosion of heroic bloodshed. It's kind of like a proto heroic bloodshed film, and so that's really the only reason I didn't put it on there. But this is a hard case, like box set release. I love this movie so much, and I'm really excited to talk about it. And one of the thoughts that I had while I was rewatching this film is that the Blu-ray labels who put these movies out, everyone has their own perception of these things, and some people are more critical of things than I'm not like heinously critical of a lot of the releases that come out. And part of that is, I grew up watching these movies on VHS or like crappy DVDs or VCDs or like shitty digital copies that friends sent to me with like bad subtitles, super pixelated images. And when I rewatch these movies, they don't just look amazing to me. They don't just sound amazing to me. I'm going to talk about the audio on this release. More specifically, I'm going to talk about the way audio is used in the film. But the fact that it sounds great on this release enhances that experience of the audio in the film. It's such a joy to get to revisit the films, but even more than that, what it does to me is that it reminds me of how much I love cinema, how much I love movies, and how much joy I get out of that, and how lucky we are to be alive in a time when we can get these films, and when it's not impossible to find a movie like Long Arm of the Law 2, there is a Hong Kong Blu-ray of, which is not super rare, which I own, but the first one I've been looking for like a decently priced physical copy of Long Arm of the Law for like a decade. It has been one of my favorite movies for that long, and I have been unable to find it. And so to have this now, to be able to watch this movie whenever I want, there's two cuts of the film on here. There's the Hong Kong cut and the international one. I don't think there's like a minute worth of difference between the two, and it's not like that much of a difference, but it's just such a joy to be able to watch the film. All the other bells and whistles, the casing is incredible. I love this artwork from Sean Longmore. There's an amazing booklet in here. There's a poster. Like, you get all these amazing bonus things, but the bottom line for me is the movie is there. And it looks amazing, and it sounds amazing, and I can watch it whenever I want, and it just brings me pure joy. So let's just talk about the film. I'll show off the physical release. I'll give you my thoughts upon revisiting this movie, and I'll talk a little bit about the bonus material in here, and then I'll be out of your hair. This was released on July 11th. Of 1984, and it ran in theaters for 2 weeks. So it was done in July 25th of 1984. It made 10 million Hong Kong dollars. Actually, that's a decent amount of money for 1984. It was directed by Johnny Mok. It was written by Philip Chan, who is in Hardboiled as the boss of Tequila, and he's in like a million other Hong Kong movies. And I think he directed the first Pom Pom sequel and various other Hong Kong films. And his story is amazing. I'll talk about him later in this review. This was produced by Sammo Hung. John Shum was involved in this film. It stars Lam Wai, Wong Kim, Chung Lin. I can't even read my own freaking handwriting. Come on, dude. Cham Jin, Shum Wai. And the cast is like mostly, they're not movie stars, which is one of the things that's really interesting about this film. And there's an interview with Johnny Mok on here. There's an interview with his brother Michael Mok on here, who directed the second film, which is in this set as well. And there's two interviews with Philip Chan, and what everyone talks about is how intensely the director Johnny Mok was going for realism and groundedness in this film, and creating like a drama, like really a crime drama. Like, I cannot emphasize enough that this is not a John Woo style film. It's not like a shoot 'em up, blood everywhere, nonstop action film. This is a drama about criminals. I think that the City on Fire to me, or Wild Search, which are my two favorite Ringo Lam films, two of my other favorite crime dramas ever, two of my favorite heroic bloodshed films. Those are both like 10 out of 10 perfect movies for me. This is a 10 out of 10 perfect movie for me. Interestingly enough, City on Fire, a Christmas movie. This is a Christmas movie. Like, this is legit a Christmas movie. Like, there's like a Christmas party in this movie. One of the guys is wearing a Santa hat, like the whole 9 yards. That Ringo Lam tone of being like a grounded, serious drama, clearly influenced by like 70s American crime films like Scorsese and Coppola and Friedkin, also clearly drawing a little bit from European cinema, like stuff like The Bicycle Thieves, like Italian neorealism, but then obviously also some French New Wave influence in there with films like Le Samurai and stuff like that. It's a really grounded, character-driven drama. It's a very intense, bleak. This is a bleak movie. But if you're expecting like a John Woo style, or like, who else makes movies like that? Like, I don't know, Michael Bay, James Cameron. Like, I know they're not from Hong Kong, but like, this is not a film with like just like endless shootouts, violence, chasing, excitement. Like, it's really kind of a subdued drama. The details in this film are so amazing, from the writing to the directing to I said I would talk about the sound in this movie. The movie, so if you don't know the plot of the film, you have this group of criminals who are from China, and they're coming to Hong Kong to rob a jewelry store. And they say, this is again great details. One of them says in the film, simple short line of dialogue where you understand the whole world of these characters. He says, from this robbery, we will make more than we could earn from our current salaries in 100 years. So these are people living in destitution and poverty. They're people who have families to take care of, who have children they need to take care of. They were all in the Chinese military. And during the Cultural Revolution, they were the guards to the gates of one of the cities. If you know about the Cultural Revolution, in certain cities in China, the shit that went down during the Cultural Revolution was completely like urban warfare, family members killing each other. Like, these are people who have seen some of the worst of the human condition, lived through some of the most horrible. They lived through famine, poverty, destitution. They committed themselves to their country. They served in the military. They protected that way of life. They protected their leaders. And what they got for it was jack fucking shit. They got screwed for it. And their attitude is basically just like, fuck the world. We have families to feed. We got fucked by life. We got fucked by our country. We got fucked by the military we joined. But we have these military skills. We're tenacious. We're right next to Hong Kong, which is this like capitalist utopia as like a British colony, and we're just gonna go there and we're gonna rob them, right? And so you see so much motivation for these characters that even though they're criminals, you feel bad for them, you sympathize with them, and you relate to them, and it's so well put together. There's this really great scene where when the guys are leaving to go to Hong Kong to rob this jewelry store, it was either the mom or the grandmother of one of the characters, you see she does like a little prayer for him and like burns some incense for him. And there's another one where he like is talking to his wife and his kid while he's leaving, and you see how much they care about each other, but you also see that they have this network of people who care about them, and that they're doing this for reasons beyond just like, oh, let's just be criminals for the sake of it, right? And so you get really deep into the characters and their motivation and who they are as human beings. They're all differentiated really well as characters. They have very different personalities. They're really well cast. The acting is fantastic. Their camaraderie is incredible. Like, it's a really great movie about group dynamics and groups of friends and people who are in it together. You also see this really interesting dynamic between when they get to Hong Kong, between them and the Hong Kong criminals, because there are moments when the Hong Kong criminals are like the Hong Kong criminals have a lot to lose, right? They live in a place where there's a lot of money. They're making a lot of money. Even though they're involved in violence, they're relatively comfortable. And there's this one part where this guy who's kind of gotten on the outs with the main characters, like, wants his guys to kind of go to battle with them, and they're like, we don't really want to fight a bunch of military dudes from mainland China. Like, they have military training and they have nothing to lose. Like, let's not fight with those guys. But it's this really interesting insight into, like, typically, when you see these triad movies and you see like how badass they are and how they're like, they don't care about anything, whatever. But then you see here, like, they actually do have something to live for. They have something to protect. They have a way of life that is meaningful to them. And these other guys are just like, we're going to burn the fucking world down if we absolutely have to. And it's just a really interesting contrast. I talked about the audio, right? You have this really quiet pastoral sound design when you're out in China. And then as soon as you get to Hong Kong, it's like beeping car horns, the chatter of the city street, noise everywhere. And there's this amazing scene in an arcade where the lead character goes into this arcade and he goes into the office of the arcade and he's talking to somebody. And in a typical movie, you know, I feel like you'd get like boring kind of reverse shots of them just sitting there, and the dialogue would be really pumped up in volume and you wouldn't hear a lot of background noise and stuff like that. And like in this scene, you hear all the noise of the people playing the arcade games and the music playing in the arcade. And it's like the way the lenses are chosen, the way the camera is placed, it's kind of back from the characters. So you get this really strong sense of being in that place at that time. And the whole movie just gives you this incredible sense of existing with these characters. The way the sound is done, the way the cinematography is done, the lighting, like everything about it is so naturalistic that you feel like you can smell the diesel fumes of the trucks going by, and like you feel like you're there with them. You can feel the coldness of the, you know, when they go out and it's like Christmas at night or whatever, and like you get this really strong sense of being there. And I think that's down to Johnny Mock's almost like borderline obsession with like finding realism in this film and really grounding it and making like meaningful, real characters. And I mean, to harp again on the details in this film, there's this really amazing, this is a tiny spoiler. There's a border crossing, obviously, because they have to sneak over the border from China into Hong Kong, and that scene is really well done. It's so intense and harrowing. There's like border guards and German shepherds and machine guns, and like a scene like that is really interesting to me because even though we're following criminals and we're kind of like, well, I mean, you guys knew that this would be like this, right? Like you're going there to rob the place, and like you're criminals, and like even though we sympathize with you, whatever, like, you know, you knew the situation you were getting into, and you knew there would be German shepherds and machine guns and stuff. But it shows you, you know, the kind of the process of the illegal border crossing in a broader sense, so that because you meet when they get to Hong Kong, they meet up with other immigrants from China and people who snuck in, and they're not all those people are criminals. And so you see this, in a way it humanizes these other characters, because you see the lengths through which they went to make a better life for themselves and how hard it was for them to get there and how much it really means for them to be there. And there's this really beautiful, like, it's such a cliche, right, that in a movie like this, a criminal falls in love with a prostitute. But there's this really beautiful relationship between one of the criminals and the prostitutes, because like they really love each other and they want to go and have a life together, but their lives are so different because he's living in mainland China in this small village, and his plan is to return, and she's been living in Hong Kong for a while and she's gotten used to it. She really likes it there. She has a support network there, and they just have a really hard time finding a way to make their relationship work, but they really do love each other. And it's really well handled, and this really interesting look at, like, you know, her experience as an immigrant and him coming in as a criminal with the intent of just going home, and how they're so similar in certain ways, but they're so different in other ways. And that's a really interesting and well done relationship. I'm going to play you right now just a tiny clip for like 10 seconds of the music in this movie, because the music in this movie is freaking incredible. And I feel like I can't do it justice just by talking about it. You need to hear it. So here's just like a tiny bit of music that's so good in this movie. Okay, so amazing music is another thing about this film that I love. But I was talking about the details of this film. I was talking about the border crossing scene. This is a little bit of a spoiler. So if you haven't seen this film, maybe you'll want to skip ahead like a minute or two. But during the border crossing, one of the guys in the group, spoiler alert, dies. When they get to Hong Kong, we see a shot of McDonald's, a pizza, Marlboro cigarettes, right? Like all these capitalist Western things you can't get in China. And we see outside, they're in this apartment, outside the window, there's cars going by, there's all this noise of the city and the street and stuff like that. Then what we realize as the camera kind of moves is that this is an offering to their friend who died, right? And so we're not just getting the contrast of like they're in China, they're like drinking this Chinese brand beer and just eating rice and stuff like that. But then they come to Hong Kong and they have McDonald's and pizza and all this other stuff. And it's not just the cultural contrast, it's also about this dream that they have of living in this place where they have no access to the extreme wealth and comfort of this capitalist global world order, but they're so close to it that they're gonna try to go and take their piece of the pie no matter what the sacrifice is. And in this case, the sacrifice is the life of their friend. And it's such a great little scene. I think it's like really poignant, but also it's great visual storytelling, and it's just really great details. I want to say two more things about this movie, and then I'll talk a little bit about the bonus material. I also realized I didn't really show off the physical release here, so I'll do that. This is going to sound really weird and hyper-specific. I am a huge fan of movies that have really long, extended party scenes. Y Tu Mamma Tambien, La Dolce Vita, I Vitellone. La Dolce Vita and I Vitellone are both Fellini movies. The Square, the Swedish film, is another film with a really great extended party scene. I love these scenes for a lot of reasons. You get a lot of time with the characters and you really live with them in these scenes. But what I really love about them is that you see people going through all these iterations of their life and their experiences in a continuous, unbroken sequence, right? So you see them like showing up for the party and being excited. You see them getting drunk. You see like they're trying to hit on people. They're having sex. You see their relationships with their friends and how much they mean to them. And that when you're drunk and you're with people who you care about and you love and you confess things to them and you're just so happy to be alive. But then you see the come down too, and the other side of that, and waking up in the morning and having the hangover, or like, it's just, I think those scenes are so poignant and so well done because we've all had those experiences and we all know what that's like, and I love those types of scenes. And this movie has an incredible sequence like that of like they're partying and they're out and they get these prostitutes and they're drinking and like it's Christmas time, New Year's time, and like they're thinking about their lives and what they want and how much money this robbery will bring them. But so the other scene it's really kind of poignant and beautiful and sad and funny and sexy in parts, and like I love that kind of stuff. There's an other sequence in this film that's a very extended sequence that I think is really good. And one of the things I wanted to mention about this movie is it's kind of an unpredictable story, which is something else that I love about it. In a traditional movie, or I guess a more boring, typical movie of this kind, what would happen is they would show up, they would see the place they're going to rob. They would case the joint. Some problems would arise, whatever. The robbery would take place. Boom, they'd be done. In this movie, they get there. They go to case the joint, and it's just been robbed by somebody else. So there's armed guards out front, and there's cages over the doors, and the police are there. And the police are kind of like looking around, whatever. And one of the cops is like, "Hey, who are those guys over there? Why are they staring at us?" So they go out to talk to them. And the criminals go to drive away. This is kind of a spoiler, but it's not really. I'm just going to talk about this sequence. This is one of my absolute favorite sequences in this film. They go to drive away, and they get stuck in a traffic jam. So they have to get out of the car and start running. The cops start chasing them, and an amazing thing that you learn from the bonus material on here, from the interviews and stuff, is that when they shot those scenes, it wasn't just that, they never like shut down streets and stuff like that in Hong Kong when they filmed these scenes. It wasn't just that. They didn't tell anyone they didn't tell any of the bystanders. They just showed up and started filming. So the people in the background and stuff, they didn't know that they were in some of these Hong Kong films, when there's like a big scene on the street, you see people lined up watching. Like it's very obvious that people know that there's a movie taking place and they want to see what's going on. In this movie, like the lead actor legitimately during the chase scene gets hit by a car. The person in the car had no idea they were actors. He thought they were like real criminals running from the police, right? The director yelled "cut," and the actor didn't hear the director. So he just got up after getting hit by the car and started doing this, like kept doing the scene, right? So it's like this amazing, almost, it's like cinema verite to the extreme, where they're actually like in the street getting hit by cars for this chase scene. But it was an accident, but like it adds so much to the realism of the scene. And then they steal a car and the cops are chasing them and there's like a shootout. It's like, I love the fact that it just keeps going. It doesn't take the easy route and cut away and go to something else, or like it's this really long, like real-time sequence of like fighting and chasing, and like I love that scene. And then of course, I mean, the last 10 to 15 minutes of this movie are like, it's like one of the greatest conclusions to any movie ever. It's in the Kowloon walled city. and it's like a chase and a shootout with the cops, and like the bad guys have holed up in there, and the well, I should say our lead characters, the bad guys in the eyes of the cops, and the cops come to stop them. And just like the geography of the Kowloon walled city, the way it's shot, the energy of it, the chaos of it, the violence of it, it's such an incredible scene. And I just did a list of my 10 favorite Hong Kong movie shootouts, and that was, I think I put that at number 3. I mean, it's just one of like the best sequences in any of these films ever that I just love to death. So for bonus material, I talked about Philip Chan as the writer of this film. You may know this if you know a lot about Hong Kong cinema, if you know about like Hard Boiled, which is a film that he was in. He was an actual cop who ran undercover agents for like years. He says there's 2 interviews with him on here. One of them is just him, and that one is 29 minutes. And then there's another one that's him and Billy Chan, who was the like stunt coordinator, I think, for the film. That interview is 40 minutes. So there's 70 minutes worth of interviews with him. He became a cop in the 60s. At one point in his career, he was running half of all the CID, which is like the plainclothes cops who are like the, like Danny Lee and the Killer, or like, like the, Chow Yun-fat in Hard Boiled. Well, that's more undercover, or CID undercover? I don't know. He did run undercover agents, though. He talks about that on one of his interviews, I think on one of the Hard Boiled releases. It might be Hong Kong Legends. He talks about how he ran undercover agents and how like Hard Boiled was like real life to him because he was actually the supervisor of undercover agents. But, so he wrote this film and he ran half of the CID agents in Kowloon as a real job for like years. So what he brings to this film as a writer, his knowledge of that world, the authenticity of it, but then just to hear him talking about it at length in these interviews, he's got such a crisp memory. He's so smart. He's so articulate. Really phenomenal bonus material there. There's a 10-minute interview with Johnny Mock, who's the director. He talks a lot about like the realism of it, how he was really going for it, how he went for it, how he wrote the characters, why he made certain creative decisions, like what his goals were in making the films. And then Michael Mock, who's the brother of Johnny Mock, who directed the second film, which, like I said, is in this set. He's got an interview on here that is 16 minutes long. It looks like I wrote down. And it's just really interesting stories about like being on the set of the film. I think he's the one who tells the story about how the actor got hit with the car but didn't hear the director call cut. And he talks about how when they shot those scenes, they would have people on the production like would be on the rooftops of the surrounding buildings, and they'd be looking down and they'd have radios and they'd be like, okay, there's like a lot of traffic over here, go this way instead. Or like, oh, we gotta, like they'd be directing, like helping direct the scene by surveying the city and stuff like that. Like just really cool details. And then there's a Frank Jen commentary, which is really great that you should listen to, with lots of cultural context and the history of the film and, all the actors and everyone involved in the film. And if you watch the Hong Kong cut, there's a couple parts in the film where mostly this movie looks incredible. I have an HD digital version of this movie, and this version looks way better. Like they did incredible work on this, but there are a couple shots in this film that look like crap, basically. And it's really interesting. Frank Jen talks about how those are shot in mainland China, and they weren't allowed to shoot in mainland China. So the reason those look like crap is they had to sneak them, and they had like no lighting setups. They were using bad film stock. Like it's really interesting. So let me show you the physical release because I haven't showed you that yet. So here's the box that it comes in, and this is the little wraparound thing. So there's like full clean artwork on the back here, but I haven't taken this off yet. So the first film is here. That's what I've been talking about today. There's the front. And this is the Kowloon walled city scene at the end. There's another scene in this movie, by the way, it's worth mentioning. There's a scene in this film where they put a guy in a car, they tie him up in a car, and they light the car on fire. And apparently they didn't tell him they were going to light the car on fire. And they legit burn the car while this guy is inside of it. And apparently that's the reversible artwork there. Apparently they just told him that they were going to threaten to light the car on fire, that they weren't actually going to do it, and then they actually did it. It's insane. It's insane. There's a camera in the car while on the outside the whole car is bursting into flames, and this guy is in there just like scared shitless, as you would be if someone lit you on fire in a car. And it's like credits and stuff like that. So there's multiple essays in here. This is The Long Arm of the Law Saga by Tom Cunliffe, it looks like the name is. I think there's 5 of these movies. There's at least 4. A lot of people love the third one, which Andy Lau is in. There's Sammo and John Shum there. And is that Oh, that's the lead actor in the film, I think, there. And I love this poster, dude. I love this poster. And there's a lot in here. I'm not going to show you like every single page of this, but okay. You've seen City on Fire with the Mexican standoff at the end. How similar does that look, right? And then, of course, Reservoir Dogs and how that tradition continued. In the States, there's nudity on that page, so I'm not going to show that to you. But there is an other essay in here. I don't know, maybe I bypassed where the essays bifurcate within the book. But there's multiple essays in here. It's a substantial length book. And then you also have the second film, which, like I said, I have the Hong Kong Blu-ray of this, but I watched this movie maybe, I've seen it like, I think twice, maybe 3 times. And the last time I watched it was maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. So I'm definitely due for a rewatch. But I'm not sure when I'll do that. And if you want me to review it, let me know in the comments if you want me to review the second film in the series. But here, I'm opening up the poster here so you can check that out. So this is the first film here, and then I believe that's the second one, right? Or is that? No, yeah, that's the second one. Anyway, so my name is Will, and you are watching Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society, and I mean, this is like gotta be one of my top 10 releases of the year, and it's just because of how much I love this film. I'm just so overjoyed that this release came out, that it is as amazing as it is, that it looks amazing, that it sounds amazing, that it has buttloads of incredible bonus features on here. And the interviews are new. Like, there are archival interviews on here, but there's new interviews on here too. Like, they went out of their way to get new interviews. Great commentary track, like I said. If you're a fan of these films, if you love Ringo Lam and other types of, like, like Mean Streets, I think is a pretty good comparison point for Long Arm of the Law and other films like that, then I highly, highly, highly recommend checking it out. My name is Will. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.